used a phrase earlier on in this conversation, which really stuck with me because I've used this phrase with my friends over and over again. You said you got to see behind the curtain. And I remember the first moment in my life where I really felt like I got to see behind a curtain that I didn't even know was there. For anyone listening to this podcast, there's a curtain on my right. For anyone watching, you can see the curtain on my right. Behind that curtain, there is actually a room in there. And there's actually another studio in there where we record some content. It's kind of like a standing up studio. We've got some backdrops and stuff like that. But the analogy that I'd give you is in life, you never know how many other rooms there are behind the wall. And there was a point in my life where I started understanding deals and the public markets and how certain high net worth individuals were playing what I call money games. They were basically not doing much work, but they understood the laws of money. So they could buy things at an arbitrage or flip things at an arbitrage and put them on the public markets and all of these crazy money games that no one had ever told me about in life. I thought the way you build wealth is by working. And these fuckers, the richest people I know, do very little working and they do a lot of money games. And they live behind the curtain that I didn't even know was there. And I was thinking about the cab driver there. There's so many, what is behind the curtain? Behind the curtain is a bunch of information. That's essentially what it is. You know, a bunch of people that have a bunch of information. What I might say to that cab driver is like, who can take you behind the curtain? Even if you have to go get a shit job for 6 months. Like you were alluding to it there, like, is there a guy or a woman that I could go just shadow, just make the fucking tea and get behind the curtain and figure out how they do it? Like if you wanted to be the best podcaster in the world or you wanted to be a good podcaster, you go ask Joe Rogan if you can go clean the floors.
100%.
You know what I mean? A lot of people don't want to do that. They want to work their way there, but so much in life is about information, right? And the information you don't even know that you don't have.
Oh yeah.
When did you see behind the curtain? Well, you worked in finance. That's unfair.
Yeah, I think it is a hack. I saw behind the curtain for the first time when I had managers and bosses who were making tens of millions of dollars a year. And I realized how little they worked, like you said, but also how average they were. You know, I saw these largely, middle-aged dudes who were no more impressive than I was, and they were crushing it. And instead of having envy or hate for that, I was super curious. I'm like, this guy can do it. That means I can do it. And I think that's a huge unlock, actually. I was talking with another friend the other week, and I think one of the secrets to success might be when you see somebody who has more, who is doing better, who has more money, realizing that means that you can get it as opposed to, I hate them because they have it. If you can flip that mindset, on the other side of that lives nothing but opportunity. And I keep finding new rooms in the house, new curtains behind it. And I'm not sure that will ever stop. I mean, I was talking to my friend Bill Perkins the other day, who's a hedge fund manager. And Bill is very successful, huge, compound house we're walking around at. I'm like, this place is pretty nice. And he said to me, Codie, do you think that because you've been around small business for so long, small has infected your thinking? And I was like, oh God, I don't know. But then I realized to him it had, because he's got way more zeros than I do. And so like those zeros become unlocks to the curtain. I mean, the other day I was flying here yesterday, and I sat next to Jeffrey Kent, the CEO and founder of Abercrombie & Kent. And he built that business up to multiple billions of dollars before selling it. He played polo with the king, is quite close with King Charles, and also has traveled the world, came from nothing in South Africa, was in a town in South Africa where there are only 100 white people, which is fascinating. Mostly was barefoot all throughout his childhood, and created the luxury travel market, essentially. And I was just sitting next to him on the airplane, and I kind of looked at his watch, and I was like, that's a nice watch. And I sort of looked at his mannerisms, and I was like, I just have a feeling this guy is worth a lot of money. And so I started chatting with him. I just said, hi, like, I'm Codie. Why were you in town? What were you doing in Cannes? And he lives now in Monaco. And what I thought was so interesting is when I talked to him, I said, what do you think the secret is? Like, you're a billionaire. Like, what is that? How do you become that? And he said, there's really one ingredient to success. And that ingredient is the thing that everybody has, but everybody wastes. Time. He's like, I ran my company for 61 years. 61 years running one company. He goes, can you imagine what the compounding looks like in 61 years focused on one thing? He goes, this generation cannot imagine. And then we went a little deeper. And I said, what do you think is the biggest difference between entrepreneurs today and entrepreneurs when you were really in the game? Because he's in his 80s now. And he said, well, back then, we were explorers of the only frontier that still existed, which was business. They were the privateers asking money for the king and queen to buy a ship to go to the new land, right? Except he was doing it in a business sense. He went to China in 1976 and was the first person to open up the Chinese market to travel. He broke so many bones playing polo that he had to retire at a young age. Like, they were hard men. And I think about it with us today. I think that we've become a generation of vitamin D deficient, all birds wearing, computer programming, alternative milk drinking softies in many ways. And some of my most successful friends who are worth so much monetarily, their health is not very strong. They don't adventure and they don't have true difficulty. And I think that's the difference between his generation and ours, and between true success and not, is this idea that I'm sort of playing with like a third degree human, somebody who has a strong mind, a strong bank account, a strong body, those three things all together. And where we don't just take other people's risk, meaning take other people's money to run our business, but we take the risk ourselves. And I think his generation really did many things wrong. I don't want to glorify it, but I think they did that right. And how much more interesting is it to do these big, huge things? And maybe if you do that, you break the frame entirely. Every time I meet with a billionaire, my mind just kind of, it expands a little bit more. And I think it's the same way, like the first time you met, like my parents weren't millionaires when I was growing up. So the first time I met a millionaire, I thought, whoa, like what is this magic land? This person has so much money, they don't know what to do with it. And then you meet the first decamillionaire, and then you meet the first 100 millionaire. And at each level, not that we want to worship money or that money is all there is, but it is a scoreboard for a game that a lot of people are playing in this society. And I think it's interesting to try to get in those rooms. And these days, those rooms are open. Back when we were first doing our businesses, a billionaire didn't write a book,
do a podcast.
Or do a podcast.
Or tweet.
Or go shake your hand at a conference. That was unheard of. And now they're all around.
What have you noticed in billionaires? What's the trend? I've met quite a lot of billionaires now, and there tends to be some similarities.
Yeah.
They all get there by different routes and different paths, but similarities in character and philosophy.
Yeah. One is, I've found most billionaires I've met have a mission so big it dwarfs the pain that comes with building. Because I do think it's more comfortable by and large. It's like the low, dull pain is being in a job. That's like kind of like having a little ache constantly being in a job. Being an owner, an entrepreneur, or trying to strive for billionaire status is a roller coaster ride of extreme pain at some points, or maybe you'd say extreme pain at some points, extreme pleasure. And you kind of go like this, right? You have to be able to wade through that. And so I find that most of them are the opposite of what I thought they'd be. I thought they'd just be like Scrooge McDuck, like swimming around in their riches. They'd be kind of shallow. Maybe they'd be super self-interested. They'd only be focused on their own thing. They wouldn't be nice. I wouldn't want to meet them. And actually what I find, this is going to sound like a gross generalization, but most of them really want to help you up when they realize that you're hungry. Like when they see the hunger paired with the ability and willingness to take action, they want to help you. It's so rare. Like if you're listening and you have that desire, but you actually do the hard things, you're rare. You're actually really rare, because everybody says they want it, but nobody really wants to do it. I mean, I knew I had to fire one of my employees back in the day, which made me really sad. The second that person told me that they had a bunch of debt, they were working in the business, with me, obviously. They had a bunch of upside in the business, but they decided to take some of their cash and they were going to invest in a day trading thing in the stock market. And I said, I really don't think you should do that. I think if you want to take that cash and buy a business, we should talk about that. I can help you if you want to focus more on a secondary business that increases your income. But if you want to day trade, what you're telling me is that you want to get rich fast and you want to speculate, that you want to get lucky, you don't want to earn it. And anyway, they kind of laughed and then they did the thing. And that was in that moment, I knew you don't have what it takes at this level. Maybe you could change. But if you're going to make that decision now, you're telling me you're a short-term player. And long-term games with long-term people, like Naval Ravikant said, is the goal. So that's what billionaires have. They think long-term. I was actually just talking with a member of my team on the taxi on the way over here. And there's close to a billionaire that I've become friends with here. And I was like, why do you think he's inviting us to do this stuff? You know who this is. And I was like, I'm not a big enough name for this. Like, there are other people, what's the thought here? And then what I think I realized is that this guy is taking a bet that I might keep growing my social platform and I might keep spending on it. And in 2 to 3 to 5 years, I might be a really big name. And because he associates with me now, when he needs something in 2 to 3 to 5 years, I'll be really big and he'll have a remember when moment here. And he could go get a Damian John, right? And pay to do something with a Damian John. But then he doesn't have the remember when moment because Damian's already at the top, right? And so that billionaire, almost billionaire, is thinking 3 to 5 years out with a potential call option, aka a maybe possibility. How often do we do that? I don't even do that enough. And so that's where I think they're different. It's just this different scope because probably they see many curtains.
With that long-term view, they want to water some seeds, right? Mm-hmm. I can totally relate to that. I've often been perplexed in my life by why extremely rich people wanted to give me a hand.
Right.
Especially when I was like 18, kid with an idea, all the enthusiasm in the world, but
you almost don't trust it, right? Like,
it was so weird.
Yeah.
I've described it as being so unusual over and over again every year for the last 10 years that when I was 18, 19 years old and I stood on those stages and I went around, again, stealing the Chicago Town pizzas in my spare time to feed myself. But all of these really successful people wanted to give me a hand, like wanted to introduce me to someone, invest in my business, even though I had no credentials. They just saw something in me that I never understood.
That would be an interesting thing to try to break down. What is it that you see in another human? I mean, one of the things that comes to mind for me is how many people reach out to you every single day, a DM, I'd love to meet you, Stephen. Could you help me with this? I would guess a lot.
None. I'm joking.
I was going to say, that seems like that doesn't track, but okay. So probably a lot. But what I found is interesting is in the beginning, when I was starting to be a little public, I would respond to almost all of them. Almost every single one I would respond. But I would respond like this. I would say, happy to help. Read this book. And then do XYZ thing for me, something very small. I'm like, read this book first, do this small thing. Do you know how many people did that?
Fuck all, none.
Fuck all. Yeah. That's a great saying. I'm going to use that. Fuck all. Not a single person actually did that. And then if you compare that with, I think I've hired 5 team members now who all reached out to me with value. They gave right away. One of them did this deep analysis on my business. Another one basically wrote up this whole piece like she was me. And it was incredible. And for those individuals who actually asked nothing of me, I gave them a job and opportunity, and many of them make 6 figures plus. And so there might be a secret there that just the humans who do are the ones who follow up.
The DM tells me everything I need to know about the person.
Yeah.
And I can give you every example of every DM that I ever get and how I filter them. How I know from the first DM whether they are someone that I should be connecting with. Let me give you the one side of the spectrum. The one side of the spectrum, which I often get, is any jobs going? In that, you've told me everything I need to know. Yeah. Because not only could you have checked if we had jobs available on our many websites where we list our vacancies, you didn't even have enough effort to go check out the job site. Yep. Didn't say hello, poorly structured message. You think that we hire over DM on the basis of no pitch at all. That's the extreme example, but it happens. You wouldn't believe, I will get any jobs going once a day without fail on one of my inboxes. And sometimes and I've never said this before, on the very rare occasion, I'm saying once a year, I'll click on the person's profile and I'll care about them so much that I'll send them a voice note. So, because I click on their profile. I remember this one kid and he kind of looked like me.
Oh, yeah.
And he was a young kid. And I remember thinking, I really, I could just ignore it. It's the easy thing to do. The hard thing to do was to try and give him some feedback on like, please don't do that to more people. Please don't send them any jobs going, ? So I remember sending one particular kid like a voice note saying, right, listen, buddy, I'm on your side here. Here's some advice. And then on the extreme end, the good end.
What happened with that? What happened?
And the response was he was thankful.
Oh, that's good.
But when he responded, I realized why he was the type of person that would send any jobs going. Yeah. Maybe a bit of a maturity issue there.
Sure.
And then on the other end, you have the perfect reach out, where someone realizes that they can't give you what they're asking to take from you.
Yeah.
So someone wants maybe an hour of your time. They know they can't give you anything worth an hour. They can't give me 50K. They can't, nothing they can give me worth that hour of my time. But they do three things maybe. The first is they realize that. And so they realize that they should offer something of value. Even I'm never going to take it. But the gesture itself, it's like someone pulling out their card to pay. The gesture itself matters.
It does.
The third thing is they realize the world that I live in and that I have no time, and they acknowledge that. So they might say, listen, you get thousands of messages like this. I know how busy you are. So just by them saying that, I go, okay, you understand.
Yeah.
Could I just sit? So I see it as an equation. Ask for as little as possible and give whatever you can. Could I just sit in the room one day when you work? Means a lot to me. The third point there is research the person, because that's a huge show of care. Yeah. I know you're a big Manchester United fan. I know your dog's called Pablo. In exchange, I've made this jacket for Pablo. I've sewn it myself. If someone said that to me, people are going to do this now. So please, Pablo does not need a jacket. We're coming into summer. He likes being naked. But just showing you made an effort, oh my God, it's the keys to my heart.
Yeah, it's true.
And then ego is a great thing as well. Everyone has an ego. So just acknowledging you've done your research on someone is another huge way.
Yeah. And I think the sneak too, if you're listening, is like skip the famous people. They get enough.
Yeah.
Like forget
don't
it.
Email them.
Like, just skip them all. Even like sort of famous people. Like skip all that and go to the people with money. Because often they're quiet. People can't find them. They don't get a lot of reach out. And so if I was young and hungry, I would skip the flash, skip the Bentleys, skip the Rolexes, skip the fame. And I would go straight to like, who's the richest sprinkler owner you know? Like, who's the guy on your block that has the biggest house that does something that sounds so boring to you? Because you also learn the most from like the level like closest to you. And if you can kind of like level up a little bit, if you go from you right now to billionaire, and billionaire goes, the thing is, you got to work hard, kid. You're like, fuck, I don't know what that means, But if you go to the next person and you're like, no, the thing is, you have to send this exact email, which is what I sent to this person. They're so much closer to your climb. They remember the steps.
And they want someone to mentor.
They do. Yeah.
They'd be most flattered by, that I have 300 sprinklers around London. Like they would be blown away by someone taking such amount of effort and care to research them.
Exactly. Yeah. And, and they probably had to do really interesting things to create their wealth that weren't single events. If you reach out to somebody who is, now I know about the show, on Love Island, like, what are they going to teach you? Like, yeah, kid, be charismatic, kind of hot, and get on a TV show.
Here's
right?
the application form.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, that's not, okay, and then have a bunch of money and get famous. But if you reach out to somebody who built a toilet business here, like there's probably a lot they had to do continuously over time that you could learn from. But it's not that sexy, so people don't do it.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.